Hey everyone, I want to talk about something important today, because it's time to get back to our roots around free expression on Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, that's right. Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, the man who is behind one of the most crazy censorship regimes that we've seen in the social media space, has decided that it's time to pull back, has decided that it's time to backpedal, which is just another instance of President Trump not even being president yet, but producing the changes that we want to see in this country, and I'm happy to see it. However, I am also very cautious of the idea that if elections go the other way, then Facebook and all these other social media companies will revert back to their oppressive systems. That being said, we're going to break down this video. We're going to talk about the things that Zuckerberg actually said, because there's points in these videos that are not being highlighted by everybody that's going over it that are absolutely crucial, including how the push from the American government for censorship on social media has emboldened other governments, and including authoritarian governments, for similar pushes. But before we get into that, thank you to everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
I started building social media to give people a voice. I gave a speech at Georgetown 5 years ago about the importance of protecting free expression, and I still believe this today. But a lot has happened over the last several years. There's been widespread debate about potential harms from online content. Governments and legacy media have pushed to censor more and more. A lot of this is clearly political.
So a couple of things of note from this particular video. First and foremost, it is obvious that Zuckerberg is using terms like legacy media and talking about their push for censorship along with governments. And obviously this can be interpreted as red meat for the people who are supportive of the evil orange man, for the evil orange man himself. But I do want to point out that a lot of this would not be possible if not for Elon Musk buying Twitter and making it a more free speech oriented platform. Now, I know there's a lot of criticisms of Elon Musk. People have issues with him, specifically around the H-1B visa thing, which we've talked about in a previous video. But the fact of the matter is, having a social media company buck the trend of censorship, taking away the left's favorite social media company in order to do so, has obviously produced results that has pushed other people like Zuckerberg in that direction. Because again, Facebook had one of the most censorious regimes prior to the changes that Zuckerberg is talking about.
But there's also a lot of legitimately bad stuff out there. Drugs, terrorism, child exploitation. These are things that we take very seriously, and I want to make sure that we handle responsibly. So we built a lot of complex systems to moderate content. But the problem with complex systems is they make mistakes. Even if they accidentally censor just 1% of posts, that's millions of people. And we've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship. The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms.
So a couple of things. First and foremost, they reached the point where there was too much censorship, too much government meddling, too much Democratic Party policing and mainstream media policing on social media a long time ago. I think the most crucial point about this sentence is the fact that Zuckerberg is interpreting Donald Trump's election win as a cultural tipping point in the direction of free speech, which is one of the reasons why I'm a little bit cautious about this change in policy, because the fact of the matter is, had Kamala Harris won the election, we probably would be in a situation where they would be clamping down even more on right-wing political speech, which, by the way, Mark Zuckerberg openly admits that's exactly what they were doing for years. So all those different various people who are in denial of that fact as they root it on need to shut the hell up, because you just got exposed. In addition to that, I will also point out that each and every single leftist who cheered on censorship, who hates capitalism, who hates private property, who use the term, oh, well, it's a private company, they can do whatever they want, even though obviously the government and the media were teaming up to enforce this censorship regime on social media, and obviously that wasn't a private company acting as a private company. Guess what? It's a private company. They can do whatever they want. If Mark Zuckerberg doesn't want to censor on behalf of your nonsensical ideas, he doesn't have to do so. Doesn't it feel good to say that right back in the face of these progressives when we actually have a genuine push from a private company in order to have more free speech on social media?
More specifically, Here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes similar to X, starting in the US. After Trump first got elected in 2016, the legacy media wrote nonstop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy. We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US. So over the next couple of months, we're going to phase in a more comprehensive community notes system.
So among many of the policy changes that Zuckerberg is pushing right here, the community notes versus established fact-checker organizations happens to be the absolute best one. And by the way, the fact-checkers actually said that they fact-checked the political bias proposed by Zuckerberg in this particular video and found that they did nothing wrong in one of the most hilarious headlines. You would think it would come from the Babylon Bee, but the fact of the matter is, the fact-checking is overwhelmingly politically biased, and one of the ways that they do that is that if the evil orange man or somebody on the right says something, they will focus on the hyper-specific thing that is in there, a percentage or something like that. So you'll end up with an instance where Trump will say a third of these people committed this crime or something of the sort, and that will be fact-checked false, like completely false, a definite lie, even though the actual number when you read the notes in the fact-check is something like 30%, which is very close to 1/3. Conversely, they will do anything and everything in order to give the left a fact-check positive or a fact-check mix, and one of the most notorious ones is the Hillary Clinton smashed her phones with her hammer in order to avoid scrutiny because of her email server, and that will get fact-check false or mostly false or mixed, even though in the notes of the fact-check it will say, well, the reason it's mixed, the reason it's not really fully true is because she handed her phone to an aide that then smashed the phone with a hammer. So everything important about that fact check, everything that's notable about it happens to be 100% true, but they give you a mixed result just to give you the illusion that the right wing is lying. And by the way, we've also seen absurd fact checks, like Trump saying when he had the national college football team over for a championship celebration that the burgers from McDonald's were stacked a mile high, and it was quite literally fact checked by one of these organizations as not literally a mile high. Great reporting right there, I guess. And it'd just be things like this that you see that these organizations would do in order to bias against the right wing. And by the way, in addition to that, they would actually remove posts that were deemed to be wrong or misinformation or whatever, even though what would end up happening was that they would be proven out to be factual and the government would actually be putting out misinformation.
Second, we're going to simplify our content policies and get rid of a bunch of restrictions on topics like immigration and gender that are just out of touch with mainstream discourse. What started as a movement to be more inclusive has increasingly been used to shut down opinions and shut out people with different ideas, and it's gone too far. So I want to make sure that people can share their beliefs and experiences on our platforms.
Again, this is also something that they copied over from Twitter after Elon Musk bought it, which is a change in how they're going to review topics related to gender identity. They're not going to do, according to this, if you don't identify somebody in the way that they identify themselves, you're a bigot, racist, transphobist, therefore you get banned. And they also are going to lift restrictions on immigration conversations. Again, two major issues that the Democrats lost on, despite the fact that they had all this overwhelming censorship on behalf of the Democrats for this. And by the way, I say on behalf of the Democrats because I think this is absolutely crucial, because what they would do is essentially use these so-called marginalized groups as props in order to get their political opponents banned, but it's not necessarily to the benefit of those groups in order to do so.
Third, we're changing how we enforce our policies to reduce the mistakes that account for the vast majority of censorship on our platforms. We used to have filters that scanned for any policy violation. Now, we're going to focus those filters on tackling illegal and high-severity violations. And for lower-severity violations, we're going to rely on someone reporting an issue before we take action. The problem is that the filters make mistakes, and they take down a lot of content that they shouldn't. So by dialing them back, we're going to dramatically reduce the amount of censorship on our platforms. We're also going to tune our content filters to require much higher confidence before taking down content. The reality is that this is a trade-off. It means we're going to catch less bad stuff, but we'll also reduce the number of innocent people's posts and accounts that we accidentally take down.
Now look, I also like the way that they're pushing this new enforcement mechanism, that essentially the illegal stuff is what they're going to try to train their filters on, and they are going to rely on reports and whatnot for other stuff that are lower level violations. Now, of course, this should have been how it always was, and while Zuckerberg talks about how there are trade-offs in this, in that you'll see more nasty content that would have been banned under the more sanitized version of Facebook, the fact of the matter is the broad censorship regime also had its own trade-offs, because if you're focused on political speech, if you're focused on people that are misgendering other people rather than criminal activity, you're ending up allowing more criminal activity that you would otherwise be able to catch if that was your focus. So there were trade-offs in the policy before, there are trade-offs now, but I think these trade-offs are worthwhile.
Finally, we're going to work with President Trump to push back on governments around the world that are going after American companies and pushing to censor more. The US has the strongest constitutional protections for free expression in the world. Europe has an ever-increasing number of laws institutionalizing censorship and making it difficult to build anything innovative there. Latin American countries have secret courts that can order companies to quietly take things down. China has censored our apps from even working in the country. The only way that we can push back on this global trend is with the support of the US government. And that's why it's been so difficult over the past 4 years when even the US government has pushed for censorship. By going after us and other American companies, it has emboldened other governments to go even further. But now we have the opportunity to restore free expression, and I am excited to take it.
Now, this is also incredibly crucial and something that, again, should be getting more attention, which is the United States of America has the strongest First Amendment protections, and for a long time, we've advocated as a nation for broad free speech on the internet, and this is something that we pushed on our allies, on other countries, as a standard for what goes on online. However, since Trump won in 2016, the push has been against misinformation and disinformation as a mechanism in order to censor people's political opponents, and what ended up happening was the establishment governments in the European Union and, of course, authoritarian governments would follow suit and use the same exact excuses put forward by the Democrats in the United States of America in order to stop their political opposition to do the same again against the political opposition in their respective countries. So the United States went from a leader in free speech into the world to a country that essentially set an example where they were saying, well, if the United States can do this with their First Amendment, if we're in a country that actually doesn't protect free speech like the UK, like Canada, like all of Europe, then we can do the same thing as well. So essentially, we were helping to export an excuse for censorship to all these different various places, and it was absolutely disgusting. And the president has said, and I'm talking about President Trump, that when he comes into office, he is going to try to push for American values and American standards to become the standard amongst our allies and worldwide. And yes, this is good and honorable to do so. Now, again, a lot of people are going to say, oh no, some unsavory people are going to be allowed to be popular, but I'm far more worried about the unsavory figures in the government that are trying to suppress their political opposition. And the fact of the matter is, if random bad people start to rise in all these different various places in popularity, that should be combated with more speech, not more censorship.
Fourth, we're bringing back civic content. For a while, the community asked to see less politics because it was making people stressed, so we stopped recommending these posts. But it feels like we're in a new era now, and we're starting to get feedback that people want to see this content again. So we're going to start phasing this back into Facebook, Instagram, and Threads while working to keep the communities friendly and positive.
And it also goes to show you that these Silicon Valley founders, and by the way, specifically the founders that run their companies, not the people that they install as CEOs, like the guy who replaced Jack Dorsey on Twitter, don't really buy into the propaganda from the mainstream media, and essentially they made a deal with the devil, not realizing when they made that deal that essentially it was going to lead to other nations trying to get better terms and their establishments trying to push censorship as well. So again, this is what looks like and what I hope is a genuine reflective moment from Zuckerberg. But also I want to point out that the other thing that he's going to do is that he's going to turn back on the news and whatnot in Facebook's feeds, because this is something that they cut off post-Trump winning as basically a suicide pact between left-wing digital media and the mainstream media as a mechanism in order to shut down right-wing digital media. Because again, the biggest pages in alternative media were often the right-wing pages, and the reason for that is because if you're left-wing, your point of view often gets confirmed, or it's almost always confirmed, by the mainstream. So essentially, you had all these pro-censorship left-wing people who existed on digital media, who made their money through places like Facebook, team up with the legacy media in order to nuke all political content on Facebook as a mechanism to destroy startups like the Daily Wire, which, by the way, was one of the most popular Facebook pages at the time, and something that, by the way, the Biden administration expressly requested be suppressed on Facebook. And Mark Zuckerberg's going to turn this off, and hopefully that will lead to people growing again on Facebook. Now, I will also point out that one of the things that's not mentioned here that I hope will change is that a bunch of pages that were banned under the previous policies should be unbanned, and people should be able to go to Facebook as a mechanism to have some free speech. And by the way, this is one of the reasons why that free speech ideals will spread, because it started at Twitter, it started with Elon Musk, it started with his policy changes, which didn't, by the way, make Twitter a right-wing paradise according to all metrics. It actually made it the most balanced social media platform of all of them, but the left feels like if they're not suppressing their opponents, then somehow it's unfair against them. Now it's spread to Facebook, and hopefully it ends up jumping back to YouTube, and YouTube becomes more free speech oriented, because essentially these companies tend to follow suit. And when you realize that the legacy media and the woke scolds and all these people aren't actually all that powerful, they want to censor because they're weak, hopefully this actually does produce a cultural push. But again, we will have to wait and see, and we'll have to wait and see how this is going to play out post the next election, because if Zuckerberg is just going to flip back and forth depending on who's in power, then the man is going to be completely useless. But this is a great day for social media. It shows the effects of Trump's victory, and one of the reasons why I understand why people were rooting for that victory. And honestly, for me, this specific change was not expected as a result of the evil orange man winning, because back in 2017, when Trump won, the changes to make all these social media platforms worse were first implemented. So this is actually a very pleasant surprise. I'm happy to see it, and hopefully we see this trend continue again across all social media platforms. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you like this video, then show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the push for free speech growing in social media. Till next time.